I'll mute it.
Yep.
And then if you flip back, just to make sure we've got all the settings, if you click on the Zoom, just to make sure you're good. Oh, sorry, on the next one. Click again, and then click on there. Okay, and then you go full screen. You can go full screen if you need to.
All right.
Okay.
Good morning. I'm Senator Bob Guida from District 2. And this morning, we'll be holding a meeting of the Senate Ways and Means Committee. Before we get started, I'll read through a checklist to ensure that the meeting we're holding is in compliance with the right to know law. As chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I'm confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and selected legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously watch and/or listen to the meeting via Zoom or YouTube and via telephone following the directions and links provided on the General Court website. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting in the Senate calendar. We're providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone does have a problem, please email remote Senate, that's one word, remote Senate at leg.state.nh.us or call 603-271-6931. It's 271-6931. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, it will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. And finally, let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states his or her presence, please also state where you are and if anyone else is in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. I will call the roll. Senator D'Alessandro. Senator Daniels.
Senator Gary Daniels, I'm in the Senate chambers.
Senator Hennessy.
Good morning, Erin Hennessy from Littleton. I am in the Senate chambers.
Senator Rosenwald.
Good morning, Senator Rosenwald from Nashua. I'm in the Senate chamber.
And I'm Senator Bob Guida, Chair of Ways and Means from District 2 and in the Senate chamber this morning. Would you all please join me, rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Senator Daniels, would you care to lead? Of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So today, we will be executing at least one bill after our hearings, but we're starting to really get into the meat of the Ways and Means revenue estimate process. First on the list this morning is a well-known gentleman with the acumen to perhaps provide some guidance to help us make decisions during our determinations. Bill Ardinger, are you there?
Yes, I am, Senator. Thank you very much.
Good morning and welcome. We look forward to you elaborating and elucidating upon the data.
Well, I will try, and I appreciate very much the chance to speak with the committee, coming from, as I see where you are, in the great Senate chamber in the New Hampshire Capitol building. That's a good sign. So good morning to everybody. I'm seeing Sonia and I wanted to confirm, say hello to her and good morning, but also confirm that you were able to receive my PowerPoint slides and distribute them to the members in the Senate chamber. Very good. And so we probably don't need to show it on the television screen, it sounds like, Mr. Chairman. Because if you all have it, or should we, because of the public, we should probably put it up there.
Yeah,
So-
that would be good, Bill, if you would do that. Yeah.
So, Sonia, if I might ask, should I share that myself? Okay, let me just make sure I can get it. Sorry for these little,
Signs of the time.
let me just make sure that you see on your screen, presentation on revenue considerations, a title slide.
It's there.
Very good. Then I will start, and thank you again. My name is Bill Ardinger. I'm a tax and business attorney at Rath, Young and Pignatelli, a law firm based in New Hampshire and with offices elsewhere. Our firm, I want to start with disclosures. Our firm represents many businesses that all are impacted one way or another by taxes. I want to make sure that everyone knows that. We represent businesses of all stripes. Also, I am a registered lobbyist for several clients from time to time. I work with my team here at Rath & Young on behalf of clients working with matters that come before the legislature. Today, I'm before you not in my capacity as a lobbyist or as a lawyer for my firm or on behalf of a client. I'm coming before you, Mr. Chairman, in response to your request on my own behalf to offer some thoughts about revenue considerations before the Senate as they look at the part of the budget process that is now before them. And my views are not the views of my clients, not the views of my firm or anyone else. I appreciate the members allowing me to make those disclosures at the outset. I think they're important. I'd like to start off my remarks, which will not be long today. I know you have a very good schedule with leaders of agencies coming before you. I'd like to start with a slide that has dominated all of our consciousness, which is, I think, also an incredibly important input to address in developing revenue projections for this 22-23 biennium budget. The big uncertainty of COVID. And as you can see from the graphs that I've put down, COVID has really been the leading kind of economic news. Obviously, it's been horrible, tragic, personal news for many families. It has also, been important in so many other ways, as you in the legislature know, meeting in these constrained settings. But I am focused right now on its impact on the economy. It's been very substantial. And the truth is, as you move in as the legislature and the Senate from, April 2021, which is, I got these graphs from the Johns Hopkins website yesterday, you can see that it's very tough to project what the future will bring. Our hope is that these curves, which are new cases, will continue to show some dampening as immunities are developed in the countries of the world. But as you can see from the world chart, as we are all focused on trying to dampen the growth of these case assessments, we see India, which is kind of an amazing developing crisis. It is already a crisis. And I think that what's instructive about that for you, I personally have worked with New Hampshire state budget processes for a long time. Since I was elected as a legislator when I was 19 years old, from Cornish and Croydon when I was a student at the university system, all the way through when I came back as a professional from Washington to raise a family here in New Hampshire, where I grew up. And I've seen a lot of budgets, including the 1990, 89, 90 cycle, where the total general fund was 600 million and the projected deficit at that time was 300 million. Now that's a deficit. But I would say I've never seen a situation which is confounded by such dramatic uncertainty about what the future economic impacts will be over the next 2-3 years. So I wanted to, kind of admit right up front, I think it's your task of coming to reasonable revenue projections is hard. I think you're going to know a lot more as the April numbers come out. And I know that in my general sense is that the April numbers came out pretty well, but they're still being analyzed. You guys may have more current information about that than I. But I think that, May, June, July, the next 2 fiscal years are going to be filled with uncertainties that'll be driven by these, in our recent times, unprecedented impacts like COVID. I think back to brass tacks, it's always important in coming up with current revenue projections over the next couple of years to think about the history of our tax sources. And this graph that I produced based on CAFR data and other data shows the contribution of our total, kind of the bigger taxes that are administered by the Department of Revenue Administration over a period from 2006 to today. I wanted to make 2 points about this, I guess 3. One is, I think it's always important to look at what happened in that 2008-2009 fiscal crisis. And you can see that it took us almost 7 years to recover from the hit that unexpected shock to our economy levied. And I think that always shocks me because New Hampshire traditionally has been a state that has led New England, for example, out of recessions in terms of recovering growth and recovering revenues, tax revenues. And in this case, the impact of the crisis was significant. I would also say that this history shows something that was done pretty well by the legislature. We had to estimate revenues for the period that not this budget cycle, but the prior, dealing with the impact of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which had a big impact on New Hampshire revenues. And you can see that in the 2018 numbers, which show up, as I called it on the chart here, a one-time pop. But we had estimated that as a one-time pop. And I thought that the state elected officials and your unbelievably competent administrative agency folks did a great job contributing to reasonable estimates dealing with that. And you can see that over time, the chart is up. This also was confirmed in the governor's budget message, executive budget summary. These taxes are tending and trending upwards. There's the history. Currently, and I've put on here the March revenue focus numbers, even in the face of one of the most devastating impacts associated with the COVID pandemic financially, our revenue system in New Hampshire has a level of diversification in it that seems to have weathered the storm, so to speak. And what I wanted to highlight here is that the business taxes have been above plan, even in the face of COVID. While we had the meals and rentals tax, which is very heavily focused on, restaurants and tourism and travel suffered mightily, a very important revenue source. But at the end of the day, coming out of March, it looks like we've got about, when you take out the anomalous accruals, about over $125 million above plan. That is a remarkable story for the New Hampshire revenue system. You know, people say don't put all your eggs in one basket when you're investing your retirement funds or whatever. And the reason is that diversification ends up allowing you to have an exposure that reduces risk, but gets you better, results over time. I think that this story of the diversification of New Hampshire's revenue system producing, kind of a positive result, even in the face of COVID, is very interesting. And it's something that is worthwhile considering as you, in the Ways and Means Committee, fashion your revenue estimates. One of the things that may contribute to the strength in the business revenues is that we've got the business profits tax and the business enterprise taxes, this integrated system of taxation of a wide range of business activity, is the remarkable focus of our business profits tax on the largest taxpayers. 613 taxpayers from this chart, which is put out by the Department of Revenue in its annual report, presented to the legislature. Most recent year that they have data for this chart is 2018. In that period, 613 taxpayers of the 74,343 who filed tax returns, BPT tax returns, 613 or 0.8% paid 78.3% of the BPT total liability. You all have seen this statistic before, but I think it's important as you fashion your revenue estimates to ask the question, I wonder what the sector exposures are in those payers. Now, there may be difficulty in getting to this data because your Department of Revenue, which is excellent, has got some constraints where they cannot disclose private taxpayer information. However, it is possible to assume that in that 613 that pay the huge bulk of the BPT, you may have businesses in sectors of our economy who did well during COVID, surprisingly. As you know, many businesses suffered mightily, like restaurants and some hotels. But other businesses in the communications area, for example, in the technology area, did very well. And I think that the strength of our business tax returns may indicate and suggest that New Hampshire has, perhaps compared to other states and the national economy, a disproportionate contribution from businesses that are in these sectors who did well during COVID. Only further exploration can determine that, but I would say that if they, have done well, and if they are from these continuing sectors, it may well be worthwhile to take that into account in making your projections. Another reason this could be high, I don't know about this because this is obviously people could have been selling assets during this period, say real estate. But importantly, these larger taxpayers are typically the big water's edge corporations that are not dominating one-time gain type situations. Their business is being managed and doing well during this crisis.
Bill, if
Yes,
you
sir.
would, could you explain for those watching what a water's edge corporation is?
Yes, I'm sorry. Briefly, the Water's Edge Corporation, which is on the bottom of this page, refers to the way that New Hampshire's business profits tax law requires businesses who have multiple organizations, multiple enterprises, to file their BPT tax return. You've got to file it on a combined group where you include every business that's really connected to your core business operation. Even though those are separate entities, they don't file a separate entity return. They combine up into a single return. However, it doesn't include entities and enterprises that are outside of the US system, which is called the water's edge. And that has a great history that foreign nations demanded that the United States put some limitations on expansion of state revenue system jurisdiction. This was in the 80s and 1980s. And so Water's Edge refers to that, Senator, a combined group with entities that are located within the US Water's Edge.
Thank you.
Where do you go to try and get estimates on what the economy will do over the next few years? There are many sources, and each of you will have your own preferred national source. I tend to lean on the Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan enterprise that supports Congress. They've got literally a team of hundreds of economists, and they have produced recently a publication that suggested that fiscal 21 will close, and their fiscal is through the end of September, will close and grow with about a 3.7% real annual GNP growth, and then follow in 22 and 23 years that you're looking at with 2.4 and 2.3% growth. The Department of Revenue in their submissions to you had identified another federal reference. I think it's important to take these things into account, and also to note that they're just as hamstrung as you are by what the heck is actually going to come in this very unprecedented setting to make revenue estimates in. I have 2 slides, and I'm almost done, about federal impacts on your effort. The first is federal impacts. Number 1, unprecedented federal aid flowing into the state. We've never seen anything like it. If COVID has unprecedented impact, the federal aid that's flowing into the state in other states will have unprecedented impacts. The CARES Act was already distributed during, the heightened emergency by the gopher provisions. That was nearly $1 billion. The American Rescue Plan, which is already law, has another almost $1 billion coming into the state system, budgetary system. Your Department of Administrative Services has to figure out how to account for this. And you're in the process of deciding what those dollars should be spent on with the legislature back in session. The American Jobs Plan is coming. The Biden administration has announced another fiscal stimulus package that may have tax impacts as well. And the real question that you all are facing as our elected officials, how should we deploy this aid? To me, and this is a little bit of my own personal preference, I like the idea that you're going to use one-time monies like these federal dollars for one-time expenditures and not build up operating expenditures that would recur and then not be funded by the dollars. But maybe you use these one-time expenditures in the spirit of spring to fertilize New Hampshire's economic gardens. I sound like an old movie, Being There with Peter Sellers and Chauncey the gardener, but fertilize these gardens is important. If we deploy these one-time funds well, it is possible that what you will do is enhance the chances over the next 5-6 years that New Hampshire's economy will generate the revenues necessary to fund necessary public services. I think that's an important goal. I would say I've looked at it myself. Our firm represents the Business Finance Authority and has since 1992. And as we look at that with James Key Wallace, their excellent leader, we've thought about how can we help nonprofits address their facility debt. That includes our arts venues, that includes childcare services. How can we capitalize small business programs that we've had? Small businesses have suffered all over the state, but coming out of this, perhaps we will need extra capital that will help people form new businesses on Main Street, restore restaurants, and the BFA's Capital Access Program is one of those programs that works very well in partnership with our existing private sector lending institutions. And perhaps, and then I would say, and I know Senator Hennessy is here, rural healthcare has faced particularly difficult challenges in this COVID crisis, and perhaps using these dollars to strengthen our rural healthcare systems will help build the garden for growth as we come out of the COVID crisis and start to regrow. Next slide is federal impacts 2. There are tax plans in Washington. That raises the conformity question. As you all look at over the next couple of years, the last budget cycle, you had to make assessments about how tax revenues would be affected by the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Now you have to make similar assessments with the tax changes in Washington. Interestingly, I don't believe that the American Rescue Plan, which is already law, that didn't have a lot of tax effects. The new proposal, the infrastructure proposal, is been reported to do things like increase the rate on the federal tax class of GILTI. It doesn't change the base, so that the increased rate should have no effect on New Hampshire revenues, because you all piggybacked the GILTI is taxable in New Hampshire, but they're not changing the amount. There's also a corporate minimum tax that is in the proposal. That again won't change revenues in New Hampshire, plus or minus. There is one item repealing this foreign derived intangible income deduction that could have an effect on tax base. However, New Hampshire is piggybacked to 2018 law right now. So if that were to pass, that wouldn't affect New Hampshire's revenues going forward. So I just put on your calendar, your schedule, your thinking plans to remember federal taxes and how they impact New Hampshire's laws. Periodically, New Hampshire has upgraded their BPT rules to piggyback federal law at a particular date. We're up to 2018. At some point, we may need to go to 2020, 2021, but that conformity question is an important issue in revenue assessments. Finally, to complete my testimony, I want to say that New Hampshire's diversified revenue system seems to be weathering the storm. The COVID uncertainty risk poses great risks to making long-term projections, but you have guidance all over about reasonable projections for regions and nationally that you can take into account as you fashion your plan. The impact of federal aid is a kind of cushion for the potential that our economy will have a dip that will hurt revenues going in the next 2 years, 22 and 23. And that may allow you to make projections like the House did compared to the governor that show strength in the next couple of years. And finally, my thought is, if I had to do it, if I were elected, I tend to think that in the face of this uncertainty, I would think about aggregate revenues continuing to grow at a reasonable rate over the next biennium. That would be the safest bet, but I can't tell you, I have no crystal ball on what I would do. I would just note in closing, there are other uncertainties that will come up. You all have an education funding litigation going on. That is going to trial. It'll probably go to trial from over the summer and probably take quite a while to do it. But, out of things like that can come things that will cause you to revisit your budget in the next session, the session afterwards. You never know. And so therefore being fairly conservative on estimates and being prepared to reopen, should that be required, is important. I thank the committee so much for the chance to speak with you today. I thank you for your work during COVID times. You guys are doing amazing work to reset our governance system as we shift hopefully through this. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Bill. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Senator Daniels.
Thank you. Morning, Bill.
Good morning. I'm going to stop sharing this now. Yes, sir.
On page 6,
Oh, I'm going to put it back on.
it's one way at the top, you had said large BPT payers appear to have weathered the COVID storm. But then you show a chart from 2018. So I was kind of curious as to the relationship between the statement and the chart.
Excellent question. This slide that I'm showing, which shows currently the business profits tax estimated at the end of March, almost $100 million ahead of plan, is the evidence that you have that BPT generally is weathering the COVID storm. One of the theories that you could create, Senator Daniels, is that it may be due to the fact that the businesses who pay BPT, to the extent we have evidence that demonstrates that, could be doing well just compared to a whole range of businesses who may be more challenged. And this particular graph I put up as the most current estimate that shows that that theory may have legs, which is, it's demonstrated. And I don't believe, Senator, that if you took it forward, and there's a reason why there's a lag here, is that DRA has to estimate and analyze returns that have already been filed, including some amended returns, so it takes us out a little bit. That I don't think anything has changed this relationship, that in fiscal 2020, fiscal 21, large payers, large businesses pay almost 80% of the BPT. And so that's the link I made to kind of say, I think that there is something to be said that our particular sector relationship may be disproportionately related to sectors who did well during COVID.
Okay, thank you. Follow up.
Please.
Yes, sir.
On page 8, where you identify the federal aid that's coming in. With that federal aid, the national debt spikes. Do you see any debt effect on estimates?
In the short term, fiscal 22, I want to show you this slide, fiscal 22 and 23, I guess my gut sense would be no. However, if I were to put up a graph of the national debt compared to our gross national product, we're in uncharted territories. You can see by the CBO estimates that I put up on the screen that they are projecting a slight trend upward in inflation. And that reflects, I believe, Senator, when I've read about how they're producing these estimates, a sense that over the long haul, you don't get something for nothing in this world. There's no magic. When you borrow money, it needs to be repaid some way. And that is likely to put over the long haul further pressure on inflation, which will increase interest rates, which could, in the long haul, have some kind of impact on the overall longer national economy. But my commentary here is focused on fiscal 22 and 23. And I don't see that immediate debt impact. And I think other economists, that people who are doing these estimates like CBO also don't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions? Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions, if I could.
Yes, ma'am.
And thank you, Mr. Ardinger. The DRA has been telling us for a while that they think there are three factors impacting the BPT. And the first one, and I think you've told us you don't agree with them. They believe that the taxation of the PPP loans is one factor. Secondly, businesses have been able to do well with fewer employees during the pandemic. And thirdly, as you show, there are large multinationals doing really well, but they're perhaps different from the corporations doing well before. And I just wonder if you could comment on that information we've been getting from DRA.
Yes, thank you, Senator. I appreciate the questions. I would say, yes, on PPP, the last time I appeared before you on Senate Bill 3, I was and remain of the opinion that the taxation of PPP generally is an issue that impacts not large taxpayers because they weren't eligible to borrow, but smaller taxpayers who I think there's other data in the DRA system that indicates that those smaller taxpayers actually don't pay BPT. They end up paying the business enterprise tax because they tend to be closely held. They don't have third-party shareholders. And that's kind of my understanding of the system. In fact, since I testified on PPP, the department has testified again, and they adjusted their original revenue estimate that came before you downward to reflect an assumption about the BET impact on their projection. I think, I'm still interested to see how the department is coming to their assessment that PPP payers were subject to the business profits tax in any kind of large sense. I don't see that myself, but I believe your DRA is one of the finest DRAs in the country and tax administrations. And so I'm interested to hear how they look at that as they do further analysis. But I would say that's not an explanation that I would focus on, Senator, as one of the contributors to this large good performance of the BPT. Why? Because of this chart, Senator. None of those very few of the taxpayers, the 613, were eligible to receive PPP loans. And so they're the ones paying the BPT. Now, they pay BET, you pay the larger of the two, is the way it typically works. So that's the way I would answer your first point. In terms of preserving profit by reducing employees, I think that may have happened, but in general, I think the PPP program required you to maintain employment. And in New Hampshire, we had significant unemployment, but I think it came in the sectors of, like restaurants, tourism, very small businesses. And in those cases, Senator Rosenwald, I think those businesses went out of business. It wasn't like they were continuing to pull the revenues that they'd always pulled, yet lay off employees. That doesn't make a great deal of sense to me, just in terms of my experience with how businesses work and how they replied to COVID. Finally, I do believe, back to this chart on page 6, I definitely believe that a sector representation. Imagine if you look at the earnings of larger corporations in the communications sector who had increased demand for streaming, increased demand for transportation of data, increased demand like Zoom, which we're on now. These companies hired like mad and are still doing so. And I think it's that growth, which is evidenced by this triangle analysis, that I believe is the strongest contributor to the BPT apparently weathering the storm.
Thank you. If I can ask my second question.
Yes, ma'am.
I know we're all waiting to get the guidance on the American Rescue Act, but my understanding of it so far is that if any of the federal money is used to fill in for tax reductions, even if it's indirect, it would cause a one-to-one reduction in federal funds. And I'm wondering if you have any projection yourself based on what the House has proposed for tax policy changes of what kind of money we're talking about.
In terms of the dollar amount, I don't. Senator, you put your finger on another great uncertainty. As a matter of legal process, that provision, that kind of tax cut ban provision, which came into the ARP at the very end as part of a manager's amendment by the Senate leader down in Washington, that provision is very uncertain. It is being construed by the Treasury Department right now, and the Treasury will issue guidance. The Treasury has issued guidance that for states who have, and a great majority of states have chosen to make clear that PPP forgiveness income is not subject to tax under their state taxes. Treasury has already clarified that this provision that you're citing would not apply with respect to states who piggyback the federal rule saying that PPP forgiveness is not subject to tax. But in the other areas beyond that, it's still greatly uncertain. There's actually a legal case pending where a number of states have said, hey, wait a minute, that seems to be a very aggressive invasion by the federal government in state fiscal policy determinations. That also is going to plug ahead. Senator, I can't make a projection in terms of possible dollar impact yet. It is way too uncertain. And that's one of the uncertainties, frankly, that, underlie as well my sense that this legislature that you're in may have to be more open to, a supplemental budget process as things become more certain. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. Any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Bill, for your presentation.
Thank you very much, and I hope you all do very well today and for the rest of the session.
Thank you. Next up, you should have Bureau of Securities regulation out of the Department of Secretary of State. Mr. Glennon appears on the screen.
Good morning, Senator. How are you?
We're well, thank you, Mr. Glennon, and welcome to the Ways and Means Committee.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. I do have to apologize in advance. There's construction going on outside my office here next door. They seem to have stopped, so hopefully we'll be able to proceed here without a whole lot of no background noise. Senator, I do believe that Sonia provided the Ways and Means Committee with materials relative to the Bureau's current revenue and projections. I am attempting to share my screen, however, it does not seem to want to work. However, it's perhaps not necessary because you have the materials right there in front of you, so I'll be able to work through that if that's okay with you, Senator.
I think that's fine. Is that okay with the members? It's good to go.
Very good. Thank you. But just as a brief review, the Bureau of Securities is organized under the New Hampshire Secretary of State's office. We are responsible for the regulatory oversight of broker-dealers and investment advisors and their member agents, as well as the registration of securities products that are sold in the state of New Hampshire. It is a pretty sizable task, but however, we're able to function as we should, even in COVID times. We are also responsible for the examination of broker-dealer and investment advisor branch offices. Although COVID has certainly put some constraint on that type of activity. We've been able to continue doing desk type audits, and we hope to resume in-person examinations this year. We also have investor education, which we've been doing primarily by way of radio as opposed to in-person activities, simply because of COVID restrictions. But again, we intend to resume in-person investment advisor activity. Just a real quickly in terms of the overall registration activity, as you can see on slide number 3, that we have approximately 1,280 licensed broker-dealers, 118,000 registered representatives. Now, those are not all located here in the state of New Hampshire. That would essentially exceed the population of Manchester. But those are agents that are authorized to conduct business in the state of New Hampshire. So it really is a sizable population. And we do review those seeking entry into the state of New Hampshire to do business. There is a qualitative review for each one of those agents that wish to enter the state to do business. There are also 2,394, and these are approximate numbers, investment advisors, and then approximately 4,500 investment advisor agents. Now, all of those entities do provide the state with revenue in terms of for registration purposes, and they also, as well as the securities products, when you conduct business, there are certain fees associated with those products when they are sold. I'll quickly move to, as you can see, just some additional information relative to our audits, as well as enforcement activity. By the way, the Bureau itself is a self-funded agency, so all fines and penalties, actually all of our operating expenses are paid through fines and penalties that may be assessed or enforcement actions that we may take. So the revenues that I'll show you here this morning, which you'll be able to see on slide number 6, are all general fund revenues that go directly to the general fund each month. Our two primary, and I'll just point to slide number 6, and I hopefully will be able to bring the committee right up to its current 10 o'clock time frame to see the next presenter lottery. Our revenues are really essentially in two buckets. The first is the broker-dealer and investment advisor revenue, and the second, as I've mentioned before, is securities products registrations. Looking at our 2020, fiscal year 2020 revenue for broker-dealers and investment advisors was 16.6 million. We're currently at 16.4 million, which is very favorable. So we are certainly on target to reach our 16.7 million in revenue, possibly even a little bit more. However, the vast majority of our broker-dealer and investment advisor revenue is realized during the months of December and January. And then it tends to level off as we go through the year. So I'm very comfortable, Senator, in projecting that 16.7 million for investment advisors and broker-dealers. On the securities product registration side, we realized revenues of 24 in fiscal year 2020, revenues of 24.9 million. And now I hope the committee is not alarmed by the current fiscal year 2021 number of 7.4 million. That number is certainly low. However, April, again, much like with a lot of other agencies, is a significant month for the Bureau of Securities in terms of securities registrations, primarily mutual funds. They all renew on the same day, May 1 of each year. So we will see a considerable amount of funds flowing to the state actually this week. We are on target to reach the 24 million in securities registration. So all told, we anticipate, when we're currently at 23.9, we anticipate a 17.3 million in registrations by the end of this month to reach that 41.2 million. I'm hopeful that, Senator, that we'll be able to exceed that 41.2, perhaps to 41.5 or higher, but it does look promising. Given the whole COVID situation that occurred, I can just generally comment, if I may, the industry was pretty stable. Even when COVID restrictions were implemented, The industry, of course, I think it was viewed as a critical service provider. I mean, we're dealing with this investment and savings of Americans, that there was a real need for that industry to continue without missing a beat. And I'm happy to report that they did. The industry quickly transitioned to remote type service. So your typical broker-dealer agent or investment advisor simply moved from their office space to home. And many of them are still there. So really in a post-COVID type environment, we anticipate that over time that those registrants will return to their office space. Some may just remain at home because that seems to be a very workable model. But overall, in terms of growth, I think that because of those restrictions, industry has been slow in terms of growth. But I expect that in 2021, 2022, that we will see an increase in terms of the number of agents registering to conduct business in New Hampshire. We've seen, certainly with some firms, right, even here in New Hampshire with Fidelity, that there are plans to grow as well for agent representatives. So overall, I think that the projections that we have at this time are solid, and I do hope that we'll be able to show an uptick in 2022. That is essentially, Mr. Chair, are my comments as part of my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Glennon. Are there any questions for members of the committee? Seeing none, I do have one question, and I'm not certain that you're in a position to answer it, but we are looking at a solution to the FRM problem that I believe impacts your finances as an agency. Are you in a position at this time to speak a little bit about that and whether it will, what kind of an impact it will have? Is it acceptable?
Certainly. I understand, Senator, that you've certainly had discussions with Secretary of State Gardner. I've been party to some of those discussions as well. There is legislation, I believe, that is currently being proposed that would provide for approximately, I believe it's up to $500,000 to go to the FRM Victim Recovery Fund, $500,000 over the course of 3 fiscal years. Those funds would come as whatever surplus that may exist at the end of the fiscal year here with the Bureau. And it would be really any fines and penalties that were received during the course of the year, less the Bureau's expenses. And then that $500,000 would then flow to that fund. So it is not general fund revenue that I just discussed. It is it is from Bureau of Securities fines and penalties. So it's largely driven based on our activity in that area. And we've been consistently strong in that area. We've been able to cover our expenses, plus return. I should point out that whatever remains, less a certain dollar amount, is returned to the general fund each year anyways.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm looking at the bail bondsman, and it looks like you're projecting revenues of $100 per fiscal year.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, I know this is Ways and Means, not finance, but what is the cost to collect that $100 of your department?
We do not necessarily have, I can't say exactly what the dollar amount would be, but perhaps, Senator, I could just give a little background with regard to bail bondsmen. There has been a considerable drop off. We would typically realize anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 in bail bond registration fees. When they register initially, it's $400 and then $100 per county in which those bail agents would operate. The dollar amount here now is just $100 because there's been an enormous drop off in the number of bail agents. I believe there are only I think there's only one now, actually, one operating in one county, and that's Hillsborough County. And this, I understand, is largely due to bail reform, that the courts now are issuing essentially PR type bail and not cash or surety, or not surety bail. So most have left the industry because it's just not financially viable for them to conduct business.
Senator Rosenwald.
How many employees work for your department on this, on bail revenues?
Well, on bail revenues, we have our total department for securities is a total of 12, including myself. And so we absorbed bail agent registrations. I think it might have been with the insurance department at some point. And for whatever reason, we inherited the function. It's purely a registration type function. So we have one staff person who does it, but it's perhaps maybe 20 minutes of time, to actually do it. And that is to actually send out the renewal notice to that one agent now. So it's really minimal, Senator.
Thank you.
Further questions? I might add as a note that there is legislation moving forward that's going to significantly change the bail system that is in fact reduced the number of people that are requiring to post bail. So I think that we'll see possibly an uptick again in that in registrations.
We're prepared certainly to administer that.
All right, any further questions? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Glennon. Have a splendid
Thank you,
day.
Senator. Thank you very much.
All right, next up, how are we on time here? 2 minutes early. Okay, so next up we have the Lottery Commission and the famous Director Charlie McIntyre. Charlie, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Charlie McIntyre, New Hampshire Lottery. I'm not sure if famous or infamous is more accurate, but I appreciate it, sir. Good morning, members of the committee. I guess I'll share my screen if that's okay.
Certainly.
Okay. Where am I? I'll just go through this very briefly and then obviously open this up for questions. Once again, Charlie McIntyre, Executive Director of New Hampshire Lottery. With me this morning is Jim Duras, who is our Chief Financial Officer. And this is a historical graph of our revenues from FY06 to FY20, obviously showing tremendous growth since FY11, which is obviously a positive sign. And the main driver of our revenues is scratch ticket sales. And as you can see over the last 11, 12 years, it's been nothing but growth. This year has seen what we would characterize as anomalous growth. We're up 22% year over year in scratch ticket sales, which for a product that is nothing if not old, or it's been in the stores for decades, is unprecedented. Really is unprecedented. This is our Keno sales. Obviously, Keno just launched in FY18. We had estimated the first year of full sales would be $40 million. COVID in 20, obviously with the closure of bars, caused it not to be 40 million. This year, we're probably projecting in the $48 to $50 million in terms of Keno sales for the bars and taverns that are open. And that's only with 200 locations currently selling Keno. What I have here is Powerball Mega Million sales. And one thing this graph is meant to show is the instability of those revenues, that they are jackpot driven. And as a result, they go up and down with no discernible pattern, only because that's the whole idea behind the game. Is sometimes it's high jackpot, sometimes it's a low jackpot. Currently, we have a running jackpot in Mega Millions of nearly $300 million, and that, if that continues, will have a positive impact on revenues. This is a breakdown of the revenues in sports betting this current fiscal year. Really, July and August weren't lost months, but they were very light because of a lack of sports. Sports really didn't get going again until September in terms of events. So the revenues reflect that. When we estimated sports betting revenues for the fiscal note, we estimated $10 million in a year. We're past that already. And we expect to be, $16, $17 million in terms of net revenues for sports betting for the year. The this fiscal year. And this is my favorite slide. This is our distributions to education. The last three on the graph are this year and out 2 years. So currently for this fiscal year, we are raising guidance. We are submitting that we will make at least $128 million net profitability for education. The original plan was for 110 million. We raised guidance to 120 million probably 2 months ago. And now we're raising it again to $128 million for this fiscal year. And then for fiscal years 22 and 23, because we, as I said before, are really experiencing anomalous growth, are submitting 125 million for FY22 and 127.5 for FY23. It's just too early to tell if the growth will sustain itself, continue, or revert back. So that in 5 minutes or less, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, is the lottery's revenue report.
All right, are there any questions for Director McIntyre? Senator D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Charlie, what do you see as the great challenges? What do you see as the great challenges that you face for the next biennium?
Always relevance. Our scratch ticket sales really have been just through the roof. And really, it's in large part, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say this to the folks I get to work with every day. As you can imagine, doing work during a pandemic didn't get easier. And we had to do, lots more work. It's maintaining interest in a product that obviously is getting old and continuing to grow as an agency, because we keep, over the last 5 years, 6 years of my life here, we've added multiple functions. Racing Child Gambling came over here in 16, 17. We launched Keno, we launched internet, we launched sports betting. It's maintaining the growth. We doubled net revenues in 10 years. And so that kind of growth requires planning. And that's really our biggest challenge, is making sure we don't miss any steps.
Further question?
Please.
Thank you. Charlie, with the enormous growth in charitable gaming, does that affect the other products that you have online?
We certainly haven't seen it yet, Senator. It's a good question. We always are curious as to, when you add more gaming, does it cannibalize or does it add? Charitable gambling in sort of dollar sense isn't as big as it seems. It's more handle than it is real dollars. I'll draw the analogy to sports betting. We had assumed that sports betting customers were our current lottery customers, and it couldn't have been further from the truth. Most of the folks who do sports betting now are younger and it skews male. Most of our traditional lottery players are older and they skew female. And so we grabbed an entire new customer base with that product line and saw quite literally zero cannibalization. So it's amazing that the numbers of people who engage in these activities varies wildly. And I'll give you an example. Traditional lottery sales, around 600,000 people in New Hampshire in a given year play the lottery. Whether it be they buy one Powerball ticket or they play regular $10 a week in scratch tickets. About 600,000. Only about 30,000 people, maybe 35,000 have played sports betting. So it's a very small niche market who really enjoy doing that. I think the same is true of charitable gambling, Senator. I don't have data because it's not really online. It's not as easy to track, but I don't think it's a very large crowd of people. And I think in large measure, if my estimation regarding license plate counts is correct, about half of it at least comes from Massachusetts, particularly locations in Salem and Nashua. And Seabrook as well.
Just one further question. Sports betting obviously hasn't been as active because of the fact that the leagues were playing a limited schedule. But when that comes back, Charlie, what do you expect in terms of revenue from sports betting?
I mean, I would expect, particularly since our hope is to go online with a few more locations in the next year, I would expect us to continue to grow that, only because it's such a new product, and other states that have similar sports betting markets have seen growth year over year during their first few years of existence. So I would anticipate that to grow. I would anticipate within 3 years, 3 or 4 years, we'll be above $20 million in net revenue for the state. Which I would also submit that this year, fiscal year, we're either 2 or 3 in the US per capita in sports betting revenue for the state.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, further questions? Hearing none? Oh, sorry, Senator Rosenwald.
I couldn't hear what he said was his projection. Could you repeat it?
Of course, Senator. Thank you for the question. So we're raising guidance for this fiscal year to $128 million. The original plan was $110 million, so $18 million more than the original plan.
That's sports betting.
No, that's all of it for the entire
sorry.
lottery revenues. That includes all sources of revenue this lottery has. And so sort of for next year, 22 and 23, we are projecting 125 million and then 127.5 million.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't hear what he said was his projection for sports betting.
Oh, sports betting. For this year, it's $16-17 million. One of the things about it, Senator, is we haven't experienced a real baseball season yet. This is really our first year of operations, and we're already well beyond what we estimated and expected for revenues. So it's a little unclear because this will be our first year having baseball because it didn't happen last year, really. So it's probably $16-17 million for sports betting for this year to the state.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the members of the committee? Hearing none. Charlie, thank you very much.
Of course, Mr. Chairman, thank you, members of the committee. Have a great day.
You get to my age, they're all great days. Thanks again. All right, next up, we have the Liquor Commission. And if they are available, we'll press on. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Great to see everyone. Tina will bring up a screen for you. We can look at our year-to-date sales. Thank you. So for the record, I'm Joe Mollick. I'm the chairman of the New Hampshire Liquor Commission, and with me is our CFO, Tina Demers. We're looking at year-to-date sales through April 18th, 2021. So our total sales over last year are up 3.2% or 19.6 million. And the breakdown by category, you can see our retail sales are up 3.1% or 14.4 million. That's 76.2% of our business. Obviously, we're seeing strong real estate sales in the state, and that's driving those additional folks in the state are driving some of our business, and folks staying at home during the pandemic, not traveling, and that's helping to drive some of our business as well. Our on-premise, our restaurant business is still off. They're down 12.3% or about 7 million. They comprise about 7.7% of our business. Off-premise is enjoying a good year. They're up 12.5% or $11 million, 11.1, 15.6% of our total business. And our miscellaneous categories in our store is up 50%, a 1.1 million or 0.5%. So that's just cementing and solidifying the fact that folks are buying product at home, they're making cocktails at home, and they're enjoying that product in their homes rather than going out at this point. Obviously, at one point, the on-premise business was down quite a bit, and they've come back. Last year at this time, we were seeing a lot of returns and people looking to get some cash flow into their business. And they were down 70, 80%. And they are coming back, and we're wishing them a great season ahead. And down below, our most recent renovations and relocations. I won't go through those. I'll just bring your attention to the right-hand column, the increase, the double-digit increase that these stores in Epsom, Tilton, West Lebanon, consolidation in Dover, and the other stores that have brought to us. So our consolidations are working. We're leaving these older stores. We're building new, greater stores, which I'm sure everyone's enjoying. We're also bringing some stores online this year. In 2021, in New London, a new store, in Claremont, a new store, and in Littleton, a new store. And those are stores that we're just replacing and renovating. A couple are freestanding, and one is in a plaza with a market basket. In 2022, we'll be bringing online a new store at Exit 17 in Concord, a new store in Renge, and another store on Gold Street in Manchester. So our traditional sales growth is around 2 to 2.5%. So we're enjoying a stronger year. And one of the things that we've seen is our curbside sales, which we started last September. We're in 14 locations where we're doing curbside at this point, and those sales have generated $2 million for us. So that's a nice growth pattern to see, and people are very appreciative of being able to order online and pick up their product in their cars, not having to go into the stores. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Tina to go through some growth revenue with you.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tina Demers. I'm the CFO of the Liquor Commission. I can bring your attention to slide 3 from the presentation that we provided on Friday to Senate Finance. That's the slide that I'll be going over, which is our revenue numbers. So this slide provides our revenue estimates in the transfer language. There are 2 laws that govern the liquor fund transfers. The first is the 5% of previous year gross profit that's transferred to the Alcohol Abuse Prevention and Treatment Fund. And the second is the additional funds in the event of a shortfall in the Granted Advantage Healthcare Trust Fund. So you can see on line 1, our net revenue for FY20 was $141.8 million, and that revenue line is increasing to a little over $152 million in FY23. Line 2 is the 5% transfer to HHS per RSA 176.16. FY20 was a little over 10 million, and that increases to just over 11 million in FY23. Excuse me. Line 3 is the additional 8.2 million requested and transferred already this year to HHS for the shortfall in the Granted Advantage Healthcare Trust Fund. This number will increase based on the letter that we recently received from HHS. And at this point, we don't know how much or which year will be impacted, FY21 or 22, because the letter stated that the additional funds are needed for the next 6-month period ending September 30th of 2021. However, they don't know how much the amount is. They just know that it's projected to be less than the 8.2 million that we've already transferred this year. And they said they'll reissue a letter when they receive their FY22 managed care capitalization rates. Line 4 are the revised general fund transfer estimates. Our FY21 estimate is now 133 million, which is actually on target to our original plan number, even with the additional 8.2 million transferred to HHS. FY22 and 23 are 141.6 million and 141.2 million. Line 5 are the estimates that we provided to the House and that were approved by the House. And line 6 shows the difference, which is an increase in the transfer to the general fund of 3 to 4 million each year. These increases are a result of our sales trends and the increased sales estimates for our new base. Line 7 is the beer tax, which is 13.2 million each year. And line 9 provides you the total transfer to the general fund each year, with our expense to sales ratio consistent each year at 10%. Now, I'd like to reiterate that these estimates do not include a financial impact for the proposed House changes of eliminating the 20 law enforcement positions. And there's also language in HB2 that the proceeds from the sale of our Hampton property will be used to retire existing debt, but we have not included an amount in our estimates because of the timing of that property. We don't know when it will be sold. And at this point, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from members of the committee? Senator Daniels.
Thank you. Do these revenue estimates change at all? I believe that there's a bill going through that would allow beer, maybe wine distributors to ship directly to customers. Does that change any of the revenues?
We don't foresee that changing any of the revenue, Senator. What we do intend to see is a shift in the way people purchase their products in New Hampshire, and to bring you back to the curbside that we've already started in our stores. That shift definitely works. People are all about ordering the product and having it brought to their homes, as well as the legislation that we have in place this year, which will allow us to ship inside the state first, and then eventually outside the state. But we don't project any additional sales trends, which would be a tax-based model or a gallonage-based model in these numbers here.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up?
Follow-up.
Just for Commissioner Malika, in your presentation, could you just submit that to the committee? Because we have the one that Tina has, but not the one that you showed.
Okay, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Other questions? I do have one. Do we still have private stores selling? And is that, in other words, I know that you and I have had some conversations and good ones regarding that. Where are we with respect to the numbers of private stores and where is that headed?
Sorry.
Should
We're
I,
having a technical issue.
I'll repeat the question then.
Sorry, we were having a technical issue.
Oh, okay.
We're back now.
All right. So my question was, can you comment on the number of private stores that are still selling liquor and where are we headed with that?
The number of private stores selling liquor in this state?
Yes.
Well, no one in this state, Senator, other than the Liquor Commission, sells liquor. I'm not sure if you can hear me or not.
Yes, we can. Yeah, we can hear you. There have been some discussion over several of the stores seeking to get permission to sell alcoholic beverage, I believe. And I think we are now restricting all of our liquor sales to the state stores. Is that correct?
Do we want to call in?
I think we're losing them.
We can call in.
I think we lost him.
Oh, I think we're back now. I'm so sorry. You might not, let's see if we can get into the camera going. Go plan B.
We're having trouble with our connection. We apologize.
Can you hear us? You might not be able to see us.
Certainly can, certainly
Okay,
can.
okay. So sorry. Can you
Yeah, we
repeat the question?
Yeah, we have no visual, but that's all right. We can hear, and that's what's more important. My question is, all of our liquor sales are now done through state stores. Is that correct? Are there any liquors or any beverages being sold through private stores?
None of the spirit sales in the state are done through any stores other than through the Liquor Commission stores. Last year, there was some language passed that allowed the beer wholesalers to sell products up to 8% to grocery stores and convenience stores. And that's worked out well, and it's something that they're enjoying. But as far as any spirits over the 8% premix, nothing is sold outside of the state liquor stores.
Thank you very
And that's
much.
the control state model that the commission has enjoyed since 1934 in the state of New Hampshire. And obviously, all those revenues go to the state, Senator.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Any further questions?
We
Hearing
follow.
none, we're grateful for your testimony and wish you the very best of the day.
Thank you. Same to you, Senator, members of the committee. Sorry about the problems we were having.
Not a
Have a
problem at
great
all.
day.
Thank you.
you.
Well, at this point, I'm going to suggest a 5-minute recess. And when we return back, we'll look to exec 533. Senator Rosenwald, ready to go. Good. See you in 5 minutes. All right, we'll come back into order in the hearing. And for the purposes of going into executive session, Chair would accept the motion.
Second.
Moved by D'Alessandro, seconded by Daniels. We're in executive session. We'll poll the members. Senator Hennessy,
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro, Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator Gaida votes yes. This time we'll take up House Bill 533. Chair would accept the motion so that we can then engage in discussion. Go ahead, Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move amendment number 1143S ought to pass.
All right.
Do I have
We
to
need to-
move the whole bill
I
with
think we move the
amendment?
bill and then
I
address
would
the amendment.
move ought to pass with amendment 1143S.
Okay, so we'll move ought to pass on on 533. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Daniels. And now we can entertain discussion, during which time.
Thank you. Based on the discussion at the public hearing, this amendment does two things. One, it adds in the statutes related to charitable gaming, which were not included in the provisions of the original bill. And secondly, it makes changes to section 4 on page 3 by realizing that the fines and penalties are basically in statute. So it changes the language to not give rulemaking authority for setting those. And that, Mr. Chairman, was your particular concern.
All right, discussion on the amendment. Specifically Amendment 1143S. Hearing none. Are you ready for the question? We'll poll for Amendment 1143S. You'll indicate support by voting in the affirmative. Senator D'Alessandro. Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
Senator Gaida votes yes. The amendment is adopted unanimously. We'll now move to accept the motion for the bill as amended. It's already on the floor. We'll poll the committee. Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Discussion.
Sure.
Just want to clarify that this has no financial impact.
I can't hear you.
It said, just want to clarify that this has no financial impact. There's no FN on it.
No, there's no FN.
Okay, but they were establishing a division of investigation. And I was just kind of curious as to where that money was coming from to take care of that.
If I recall correctly, Charlie had said in testimony that they could manage this in-house. But I'm happy to confirm that. And if you want to suspend, go ahead, Senator Hennessy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had asked that same question in the hearing, and they had said that the sports betting bill had given them additional positions that would be able to handle this.
I couldn't understand. I'm sorry.
The sports betting bill had given them additional positions that would be able to take on this additional work.
Right. Right. So that this bill will not require additional personnel.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. Further discussion, questions? All right, we'll poll again. We'll start from the beginning. Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro. Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
And Senator Gaida votes yes. Unanimous. Is there a motion for consent?
Move consent.
Senator Rosenwald moves consent.
Second.
Seconded by Hennessy. Senator
Yes.
Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro. Thank you. Senator Gaida votes yes. And who will take this out? Senator Rosenwald can take this out.
It's going to be easy since it's on consent.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, there are no further bills to be considered at this point. And so we'll take a motion to come out of executive session.
So move. Second.
Okay, moved by Daniels, second by Hennessy. Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro. Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
And Senator Gaida votes yes. Take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
D'Alessandro
Yes.
and Rosenwald, second. Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro. Senator D'Alessandro.